Welcome to A Cup of Tea, a platform for insightful conversations with industry leaders. India is considered the pharmacy of the world. Let's talk to an expert about what it is like to outsource to Indian pharmaceuticals. Let's see what we can learn about global relationships, little differences, and important trends. This is Bernhard Gandolf, Managing Director of eisq, your specialized consultancy for outsourcing and pharma. Today, we are joined by Kuntal Chatterjee, who has been living and working as an expert for pharmaceutical licensing in Germany for over 16 years. Whenever it comes to business development, in-licensing, out-licensing of pharmaceutical or medicinal products, Kuntal is the person to ask. Cheers and welcome, Kuntal, to an inspiring cup of tea and conversation. What's in
Cheers.
your cup?
Yeah, it's actually green tea, but it's cold. But yeah, thank you, Bernard. It's a great pleasure to have you today. Thank you.
Great, likewise. Let's start.
Sure.
Three figures about the Indian pharmaceuticals. 20%. Every fifth generic drug comes from India. 60%. India is the world's major producer of vaccines. 120 billion US dollar. According to India's investment agency, the pharmaceutical sector is expected to outreach this giant amount just within 3 years. Could you explain the practical consequences of these figures to us, please? And how are these figures related to licensing?
Sure. So thank you, Bernard, for this good introduction. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all the viewers who are looking at, this podcast. I am Kuntal Chatterjee. Originally, I am from India. I came to Germany in 2009 and, started my career in pharma industry. So coming back directly to the question, and of course, you can follow me on LinkedIn, if you want to know more about my background. I don't want to bore you with all that. So India has been, a very, very, let's say, major contributor in the industry, especially, let us start with generics. I think it all depends on economies of scale, right? So if you see, there are a lot of components, most of the Indian players, like I started with Dr. Reddy's, in 2001. And that time, all the companies or most of the companies like Dr. Reddy's, they started with API, active
Mhm.
pharmaceutical, manufacturing, or what we call as drug substance. And then, with that, they slowly geared up, bringing in generics to the world. So I remember my days when, fluoxetine was launched in 2001. And that time, it was a big thing because they had received 6 months exclusivity in the US market and in various parts of the world. And why India, and why not, you know, other parts? Because India was early enough to reach that economies of scale and give a, let's say, a push to the quality and quality. And if you see that time, China is now doing very good. It is, let's say, it is also one of the major producers. But that time, India picked up the trade because of the, let's say, having more uh, persons who are educated in this line. So you have pharma hubs and you have companies already having the threshold of 20-30 years in this manufacturing. And due to the Hatch-Waxman Act in US, wherein andas were supported, and all the
Mhm.
government, including US government, was supporting more generics, Indian players
Mhm.
was in the right time and right place at the right time. And then
Mhm.
this is about generics, and that is the reason we have roughly,
Mhm.
one out of every five generics made in India, also for supplies in Germany. But if you go to vaccines,
Mhm.
again we saw that during COVID,
Mhm.
there was a huge dependence on India
Mhm.
from all across the world, from US, from China, from even from
Mhm.
Russia, people were manufacturing vaccines. So everything concentrated. Why? Because there are a lot of players who were already doing vaccine
Mhm.
productions in India, and it's just again India was able to manufacture at a right speed and supply to the world. And of course, a lot
I
of
see.
regulations were harmonized that time
Mhm.
during vaccine production. But that also shows that how the world, the West and the East came together to
Mhm.
actually, give up something or prepare something just in time so that millions of people could be saved, during COVID.
I see. So, what is special about the Indian pharmaceuticals? It's first of all economies of scale you mentioned.
Yeah,
Second of all, the right strategy of the government.
yeah,
And third of all, an educated sector, educated staff.
sure.
Great. The world's biggest democracy, 1.4 billion inhabitants, 1,600 languages. India is one of the global hotspots for IT outsourcing, Bollywood, and pharmaceuticals. Could you introduce us India a little bit more?
Sure. So India is, a country of multicultural diversity. It's a country where, you have lot of, different sects, different languages, different religion, all living. It's a melting pot, as we say. So how can we define India? India is defined best by its, let's say a kind of a sentiment which lies deep rooted. It is a land of the, let's say, great sages, who
Mhm.
actually started just by let's say letting it go, many things just by following deep thoughts inside. And also, there are a lot of good scientists who were there, like Aryabhattas, the CV
Mhm.
Ramans of the world, who led India to a stage where it is now today. And of course, in terms of pharmaceutical,
Mhm.
if you see, a lot of, as I said, India started manufacturing complex active
Mhm.
pharmaceuticals, APIs. And then the scientists actually was able to really crack the formulations,
Mhm.
of the, let's say, the innovator products, and really see how they can have a launch of generics after patent expiry. And also, if you see, India was regarded as a country after 2005, and also, during that period, a country where innovators trusted on
Mhm.
outsourcing, the supplies, because, there were
Mhm.
a lot of fear before that people will still, the patent protection will not be
Mhm.
enforced. But India was seen by the global leaders, including the Novartis of the world, who established the, centers in India, and many other big companies who actually outsource manufacturing, as a country which is, united, and enforced patents are there. And also, as I mentioned, there was an inheritance of lot of, let's say, products which
Mhm.
were there in India, branded products from, early on. And
Mhm.
this gave the confidence in all the big players to come to India and establish their, regional operations there. So in short, India was always, in the picture, but it was
Mhm.
more of information technology, IT, in the late
Mhm.
70s, late 80s, when the Infosys of the
Mhm.
world started. But slowly, when I started my career, in 2000, 2001, that time we saw that India was coming to the world picture with
Mhm.
generics, pharmaceuticals, and productions.
Great. My pleasure that you introduced to us this melting pot. We've learned India turned from a workbench into a hub for innovation in terms of biomedicine and pharmaceuticals. In the projects I'm involved in, it is much about end-to-end partnerships instead of former client-supplier relationships. What's your view on this, especially when looking at the relationship with Indian companies?
Sure. So I think, it's all about relationship management. And that's one of the things which we should really focus, today and also later. And this is one of my favorite topic, Bernard, So, when we are managing a project,
Mhm.
so it is not managing a project. I always say that it is managing the cultures.
Mhm.
So if we manage the culture well, if we respect each other, like a buyer and the seller. So I think it all comes with understanding the pain point, what's the problem, and how can we help you? How
Mhm.
can we help you and make others' life, possible? So in this aspect, I think India was there because if you see just, I will give you 2, 3 examples so that you understand. In India, it is automatic that you do a proper follow-up right from day one when you are in the college, just not to miss anything. So this culture of really, let's say caring for each other and really, getting the right things done and the setting the priority in a family also imbibed this genetic makeup, as I say, of getting things done in chaos. And if you take it in a higher spirit, in a positive way, likewise navigating a traffic out of the busy roads in a busy junction where it's all chaotic but people are still flowing, the traffic is still flowing. And if you imagine that picture with managing a complex generic formulation operation where biostudy can fail, where things can go wrong, where your formulation will not be, stability can fail, where everything in the world can go wrong, but still you have to deliver, the mindset has to be changed. And I think in that respect, India was able to attract that kind of let's say tribe who came early on and who become the big entrepreneurs like Dr. Reddy's and all the other big giants which we have. And of course, I have the privilege of working in many Indian companies like Aurobindo, Dr. Reddy's, then Apotex, who also had this company in India. So more or less, I saw that there was a as you said, there was a clear-cut deadline-based approach. That means when I grew up, when I started my career, Bernhard, we were measured by first to file. So why this example of first to file? As many of the viewers will understand, first to file means you have to be there at the day one, get the stamp at the Baltimore office. I was actually a regulatory affairs manager myself, Dr. Reddy's. I had seen the whole life cycle of submitting the dossier with USFD and getting that stamp on the first letter, which I say that your first to file is actually submitted. And of course, there is a process, it has to be accepted and all that. So this whole trajectory of being, an incentive for generics to be first to file, the first wave of launch, and really helping the whole, let's say the population with having a quality product in quality time and also getting the exclusivity. I think this has to do a lot with effective project management and really deadline based approach. And in our licensing field, I was very happy to see that there was a constant flow of make or buy approach. That means, make is R&D, as we all know, and buy is getting, it in license from others. But both, for example, I have seen for products like clopidogrel and various other products, I have seen that both make and buy going parallel to each other. That means, at one point of time, they decided, depending on the biostudy or stability, whether to continue with make or go for buy. And this was really very great experience that we never say no to anyone. We can do it ourselves, but we also have alternatives so that we get that exclusivity that first day to launch. And of course, there are a lot of incentives, as we all know. Then came authorized generics, there were NC-1 and all these projects. But overall, generics had a clear-cut incentive, and that was materialized with a solid project management in space.
Great. So if I paraphrase it and shorten it, it's first of all, respecting and taking care of different cultures.
Yeah.
Second of all, solid project management. And third of all, my takeaway is to deal with the open mind of Indians. You draw the picture of the chaotic traffic, although it works, and this can be used in projects.
Sure.
Thank you. What is important for European or American pharmaceutical companies to consider if they choose to partner with an Indian company?
Yeah, so this is a good question. Actually, now the Europeans have really, formed the bond with India. So I think this interview is little 4-5 years dated. I could have told in a better way, if you have interviewed me 5 years back. I think now Europe and India is working much more, closely than ever before. This is also because of the, I'm not a political guy, but I have seen that due to a stable government in India. There's a lot of policy making and government really taking that initiative in this, public affairs. Lot of things have changed. But coming back to what each cultures can run from itself, like I am in Germany for last 16 years and vice versa. So I think, one thing which I tell again and again is to avoid the laid back philosophy. It doesn't mean that we have to follow up every day. But, the only thing which I tell my Western friends every day, that look, always, don't be afraid or don't be annoyed that something can go wrong, but prepare a checklist of what can go wrong. So that I actually, if you put it in a positive frame, so if we follow a checklist based approach so that we avoid the mistakes, everybody, has their own role. What I have seen in the Western world, without any offense, is that people are really, they know exactly what they are doing, but there are a tendency of working in silos. In India, it's not possible because, the culture is such that they have to work together from day one. And but similarly, if you see what India can learn from the West, India can also learn how to really go deep dive into the details, how to really focus on one thing. So I think these two things, from West focusing on the one thing and being an expert, and from India doing many things, and doing it, let's say, connecting the dots. If the both West and the East, if in the pharmaceutical perspective, for example, doing one thing with a detailed checklist based approach and following up on a routine basis, for the Western friends, I always tell that you have to follow with, on a routine basis, because it's not that if you follow up well, the project will go well, but it should be a practice whereby you don't miss anything. So I think that's the only example I can give, apart from the fact that also, I think this is the most important thing which the Western guys want to learn from India, is actually looking at, let's say, how quickly change is possible. So, when I came to Germany, changing anything was possible, but it took a lot of discussion. In India, change is automatic. Nobody's afraid. So that's another positive. I'm always telling you, tell in the positive way, because generics drugs, or anything generics, have to be very, very open to anything change for good. And if that can be done, as I said, East and West, if they can really work together in changing rapidly and taking fast decisions, I think then is the ideal situation. But thanks for the question, Bernhard.
Great, fantastic. So please prepare yourself for checklists, be open to quick changes, and deal with the different cultures so you'll be successful. Given the increasing complexity of pharmaceutical outsourcing projects, what are the key competencies and skills a project manager like yours needs to possess to successfully manage these initiatives with Indian partners?
Thank you. I think this is again the question, which lies for the last 15 minutes what I told. But let us be specific, So if we go a little bit deeper, so what are the things which goes wrong? I think, most often if you see in terms of generics, there is a tendency of biostudy failure. And if you see why the biostudy fails, just because there is a difference in formulation, not only in the generics but also the innovator batch to batch variation is there. So if you see how you can really outweigh, how we can go deeper and really have a correct supply chain or correct project management, is by really pulling extra batches of innovator and really having this kind of basic test like dissolution test, like basic screening, as I say, so that we control not only the development batches, that means the generics production, but we also control the reference drugs, the innovator drugs, RLD, as we say. If we have, because we always check in-house that we are matching the parameters we are doing, but we don't check always the batch to batch variation of innovator. We don't check always, what are the things can go wrong with impurities,
Mhm.
really taking that extra effort early on in identifying some impurities which is unknown, as we say, you know,
Mhm.
taking that extra effort with patents, like to see that we are not infringing any patent, or, what are the ways to really have a faster launch. And last but not the least, really, for every development, really checking country by country on what scope it is there. For example, I have seen in my experience
Mhm.
of last 25 years that small things affect a lot. For example, even a regulatory submission, a correct regulatory strategy. So I would advise youngsters who are coming in this field to have a regulatory affairs team member right from day one, because your regulatory strategy should be clear from day one. We should not scramble in the end. Similarly, the whole development strategy, I would advise the youngsters to have an analytical development guy, AR&D as we say, to think of developing the methods and protocols so that it can be really transferred easily. Because as we
Mhm.
know, if you export any drug from India to US to EU, in EU you have to do retesting, right? So
Mhm.
if you have methods and protocols, including the availability of columns, which
Mhm.
are easily available, methods which could be easily transferred, and because then this tech transfer, if it can be handled, testing can be handled, and the process can be handled, including serialization. I think if you think of everything from day one, then the suffering is much less, and we have more or less, we have, as we say, the correct first launch, and then of course, scale up is possible.
You scale up. So
Yeah.
it's the love for the detail in my language and to know where to get the relevant pharmaceutical know-how, medical affairs you
Sure.
described, for instance, testing you described. So this is something you need to possess as a project manager, either yourself or, as you described, to get some youngsters in your team to do all those checks. And the quality, the love for the detail, this is the major hint you give to our audience. Great. Pharmaceuticals have accelerated and transformed their business in an outstanding way in the past 3 years. This is my external perspective. Will the speed and need for tech transformation stay the same in the next 3 years? What do you think?
Sure. I think it's a good question, Bernard. I think the answer is yes. Because,
Okay.
if you see due to the current geopolitical situation, in Europe, if you see, there is an ongoing war in US, the tariff rise is there. So I think for next 3 years, I can safely say, but it's up to economists to validate that even if you consider tariffs, still India will be competitive in manufacturing. That's the first point.
Mhm.
So even if you put tariffs, I strongly believe that Indian manufacturing will still be competitive. Of course, there are a lot of other things which has to be, taken into consideration, like the API and production.
Mhm.
Second thing is, if you see the global picture, anything, if you want to change, change is a painful process, right?
Mhm.
So currently, whatever manufacturing is ongoing, I think that will continue because already India is delivering, quality is there. So that's the second thing. But the third and most important thing is the whole, as I said, in terms of complex, products, complex
Mhm.
generics. I personally feel that India is a perfect breeding ground of doing the development as well as bio studies, because everything is available at one hub or one spot. And this is the reason I feel that easily, for next 3 years, India will still be a kind of a product producer at choice or manufacturer at choice for the West. And there would be still a lot of tech transfer projects going from, Europe to India or US to India, even though there is a kind of, discussions which will happen to have more of the products made in Europe or made in US. So there will be balance. But Indian players, if they continue to deliver quality products. So this is the caveat, they should continue delivering quality, because that's the most important thing. And once that is there, I don't see any risk of India coming down with the production. It will grow and grow for generics and also for other products.
So according to you as an expert, the need for tech transformation will stay at high as it has been too, and India will stay as the pharmacy of the world as it is now. Kuntal, thank you for sharing your invaluable insights with us today. I'm absolutely confident your expertise on pharmaceuticals is incredibly enlightening for our audience. We appreciate you taking the time to join us for a cup of tea and a stimulating conversations. For those of you interested in exploring partnering with Indian pharmaceuticals further, please do not hesitate to connect with Kuntal Chatterjee on LinkedIn. You can find the link in the video descriptions. And if you'd like to discuss your specific outsourcing challenges, feel free to schedule a complimentary consultation with our team at eisq. Visit our website to book an appointment. Thank you for watching. We look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in the future.
Thank you, Bernhard. Namaste to all my viewers. Thanks a lot. Okay. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Namaste, Bernhard Gandolf.